Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to the continuation of the MCU Rewatch. This being, once again, me just rewatching the MCU movies so far. For this time, I ended up rewatching Ant-Man and Captain America Civil War. So, first off, Ant-Man. Still enjoy it. Like, Ant-Man's one of those movies, like, I really liked the first time anyway, but I still really liked it the second time too. I feel like I might have even appreciated it more the second time through. It's one of those movies, I don't know how general most people felt about it. Like, from what I've heard from most people, some people liked it, but a lot of people had mixed reviews about it, mixed thoughts about it, just because of the whole Edgar Wright situation of, like, he had his own vision of what he wanted Ant-Man to be. They took some of it, I think more some of the action bits, and also at the same time, but then, like, I think butting heads with, like, Marvel about how the movie should be handled and stuff like that, what they wanted versus what he wanted, like, that type of whole situation. Like, conflicting visions on how everything's supposed to be. So there's that. I really won't, obviously delve too much into that. But honestly, rewatching this movie, I really enjoy it. Cause I feel like, for one, what makes this movie stand out, not only just because of who Ant-Man is and what it all represents, like, it's just like, it's really cool to represent that hero and what it is, and it's that, oh, you can shrink and grow, but even though you shrink, you're like super strong. Also, the different ants that he has, like Anthony, as well as all the other ants, some being builders, some kind of being conducting electricity, kind of having their own unique properties, which I think is such a fascinating thing. But on top of all that, it's a heist movie, and I feel like that's never been done prior to Ant-Man. Was like, like this superhero heist movie. Like, I mean, that's essentially what that entire movie was, like a giant heist movie, like broken into different pieces. But obviously it makes sense considering who Scott is. What was the term he used? Because he doesn't like the term burglar, because it means I think it means to do harm or something when you rob or something like that. So that's why he doesn't like the term. So his team, of Luis, Dave, and Kurt, like, just that little team. And I feel like rewatching it, I really appreciate the fact is that he is struggling, because obviously it's like, oh, you're an ex-con and you're trying to find out, try and get, I mean, it's really sad too, because I completely forgot about the whole reason why he went to jail in the first place is because, oh, actually he stole from, like, some bad people, the company he was working for were doing some shady stuff. He found out the truth, they fired him, and then he kind of exposed a lot of stuff on it. It's like, oh wow, I'd completely forgotten that was kind of like connected to what happened to him in the past. That's kind of where it all started for him. I was like, wow, I'd completely forgotten about that. Also, rewatching it, I came to realize, like, wow, Scott's pretty damn smart, especially when it came to breaking into Hank's house, like breaking into the safe and stuff like that. I was like, that's like pretty smart, like thievery essentially, so I thought that was kind of fantastic. Other things I'd completely forgotten about, like, for one, I'd forgotten that, like, Hank had never told Hope about her mom. It's like, oh yeah, you never told me how mom died. I was like, oh wait, you never knew? I was like, wow, I forgot that was a plot point of her learning. I'd also forgotten her and Hank weren't actually on good terms. I mean, it's one of those situations where it's because he was kind of dealing with his own grief at the time that he wasn't there to help his daughter through her grief as well, because he was kind of so caught up in his that he kind of pushed her away because he was trying to protect her from the truth and just protect her in general, and that kind of cost him his relationship with his daughter. I love they had that moment, and then Scott's just like, this is good, you're talking, this is healing, and he listens like, I ruined the moment, didn't I? He's like, yeah, you did. I love it. I even love at the end when him and Hope kiss, and he's like, oh my god, you're making these advances. It's Paul Rudd, and I think that's such a great thing. Like, I'm just like, oh, you're so good, Paul Rudd. Like, Paul Rudd's one of those actors, like, I just adore you so much, dude. So it's just kind of neat seeing you being this superhero who kind of little jokey and kind of got this funny man charisma about him. This is also one of those movies, I don't know, maybe it's just in retrospect, but it's like, I feel like the villain in this, Cross, it's like he seemed like he was nuts to begin with. I mean, they right from the get-go, it's like, oh yeah, that guy won't kind of go with what he wants, so he zaps him with that and turns him to goo. His attempt at the Pym particle, instead, when it is supposed to shrink people, it turns them or anything that gets hit by it with just the goo, and he just does that and he wipes the dude up off the floor. I'm like, that's very psychopathic immediately, because even Hank talks about it later on. He's like, yeah, Cross wasn't the most stable person. I think that's such an interesting thing, because I didn't remember that line, but basically constantly shrinking and stuff like that over the years does something to you. Like, the Pym particle will eventually mess with your head. You do it long enough of it, which is like something I do know about Hank, at least one of the Ant-Man, and I think it is Hank in particular. They don't delve into it in the movies at all, even when it comes to the Hank stuff, but apparently a lot of stuff with him in the comic books is kind of like, you don't, I guess that's just something they weren't going to really tackle. It's kind of like the whole It's something about Tony in the comic books. He's kind of an alcoholic. The movies don't really touch that. They kind of touch on it in 2, just because that's his way of dealing with the fact is that he's dying and he just doesn't really tell anyone. So, but there's a lot of stuff when it comes to Hank, I don't know if they're ever going to touch on in the movies. I mean, interestingly enough, like, there has been recent talks about, like, making a prequel to Ant-Man, kind of following Hank, which is wouldn't be interesting. Because he's the first one in the MCU to kind of, like, be a pre-existing superhero to pass down the torch to someone. I think he's the first one to, in my thought, he's like the first one. Well, technically, because I guess you could make the argument, the same thing about T'Challa's dad. Like, he was a Black Panther before him, and it eventually got passed down to T'Challa, but, I mean, it also depends on the time frame on that, so. At least within the frame of the movies, chronologically, timeline-wise, that might have been that. Like I said, it also depends on how the rest of the MCU plays around, because like the MCU, like I feel like rewatching this, like I've come to realize like how much the timeline kind of moves all over the place, but I'll kind of get to that in a minute. But it's just kind of like I assume the whole T'Challa thing might have happened first, but I mean, who knows, like the whole Scott becoming Ant-Man thing might have happened first. Either way, but the whole reason why I bring that up about the whole like timeline thing is because when Sam is looking for Scott at the end of the movie, which I love those bits about like, oh yeah, like Luis heard from this person, who heard from this person, which led to like, you know, those little moments of him just explaining things and kind of like doing a kind of voiceover for people when they're talking about like how he got the information he need, like. Because technically, I think the end of when Falcon is looking for Scott, I'm wondering, is that him looking for Scott because of what went down at Avengers Tower, or is this him needing Scott's help when he's looking for him in Civil War? It's kind of hard to say, especially because the movie ends with the scene from Civil War where Falcon is like, I know a guy. Which also really cool. The lady he's talking to is Anna Akana, which still kind of trips me. I was like, right, Anna Akana's in it. I was like, that's so cool. Like at the end of the movie, the dude, Luis is talking about like, oh, I talked to this dude and that dude talked to a lady. That lady is played by Anna Akana, who ends up talking to Falcon. I just think that's amazing. So like, that's what I'm talking about. Like the MCU movie seems like they move all over the time, like timeline wise, because obviously like, it's like, cause that was at the end of the movie, and I guess like, cause obviously Civil War doesn't happen until like a little bit later. So that obviously, cause that was 2015, Civil War happens in 2016. Once again, like to my knowledge, because you know, once again, the timelines are kind of crazy as they are. So, but overall, like I feel like it's such an enjoyable, still kind of fun, wild ride with everything that goes down, which is interesting because obviously, like it's what is it? It's Thursday at the time we're recording this, so Ant-Man and the Wasp comes out tomorrow on July 6th. July 6th. So that's pretty cool. So it's kind of perfect timing to ended up watching this, you know. Actually, it's perfectly that I ended up watching both of these movies because Civil War ties into Ant-Man and the Wasp too. So I mean, obviously the whole connectivity between all of them. And obviously I brought him up earlier, but I do like the whole Falcon and Scott fighting thing, and it's just kind of interesting how that thing wasn't just kind of a throwaway thing. It eventually leads to like him obviously popping up in Civil War, because it's like, yo, Falcon knows about him because of that. So there's that. I still love that, and just love, like, I love that they utilize that very heavily and very nicely in just his fighting, which I think, I don't know, it's such a unique way of fighting, like, because it's such a unique ability in this universe. So I don't know, it's just such a fascinating thing. And on top of all of that, there's the whole quantum realm thing, which is kind of interesting. I'm curious to see whether that comes back into, I mean, obviously there's everything going on with Hope's mom, you know, Hank's wife, in the quantum realm, and obviously like Scott was able to come back from him. Maybe she can too, which maybe that might be something that's tackled in Ant-Man and the Wasp, which obviously this movie sets up too, because the Wasp outfit's there, and it's like Hank is like, yo, me and you know, when he's talking to Hope, is like, look, we can work on this together. She's like, about time. Also at the end of the movie, whatever happened to that dude, the dude who Hank punches at the beginning of the movie, he pops up later on. It turns out he used to work for S.H.I.E.L.D., but it turns out he's actually Hydra. Whatever happened to that dude? Last time we see, he's like running away with that stuff. Maybe that comes up later on or something. I don't remember. I don't remember exactly anything happening to him. I just remember him running away with the sample. So who knows? Maybe that turns into something in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Maybe it turns into something else entirely later on. I don't know. And now moving on to Captain America: Civil War. rewatching it, I've always thought so ever since I first watched it, but I think even rewatching it now, I think Civil War, for being what it is probably my favorite movie. Now, what I mean by that, because it sounds like a double, like a backhanded compliment. What I mean is because it is like an Avengers movie to me. I know a lot of people make that thing of like semantics about it, like technically, why isn't it an Avengers movie? I don't care, it doesn't matter. Nevertheless, the fact of the matter is because it is a movie that is a culmination of everything that's happened. Like all these events have led to the events of Civil War. It's just all been kind of like heading to this point, and so that's why because it's not a very standalone movie. I think if I had to pick any movie that's probably my standalone favorite movie, it's Homecoming. But once again, we'll talk about Homecoming when time. Obviously, because this movie is so good. For one, like for whatever reason, I didn't remember this movie being as actiony as it was. I didn't care because all I cared about was the story anyway, which I love the action bits. But I was like, I didn't remember it being as action. It's like, what the hell am I talking about? Action's all over the place. But nevertheless, it's such a good story. Like I said, because it's like you can see both sides of the argument. You can see where Cap is coming from. You can also see where Tony is coming from. Once again, because even though I don't know that much about comic books, I do know that there's a big difference between the movie and the comic book storyline of Civil War. I mean, for one, because the comics involved like pretty much everyone in the MCU, in the Marvel universe, which included X-Men. So like that's a whole thing. The Registry kind of worked similarly and yet differently. It's kind of a whole thing, but it's just I like that divide just because certain events kind of led people to kind of be where they are, where they stand on the situation. It's kind of interesting, the mom who actually went to Tony in this episode, in the movie, is played by Alfie Woodard, who interestingly enough is Mariah on Luke Cage, which I thought was kind of interesting. Like I thought with the whole continuity and everything they wouldn't, but I guess it's because at this point in time is the heavy divide. I guess this is roughly around the time the heavy divide between the TV shows and the movie, so it's kind of like we can let that slide. It's not that big of a deal. We don't have to get all, I guess, anal about it because it was a small character anyway, but that character set everything in motion along with other stuff. I mean, at the very least, it changed Tony's mind. Like, I'm curious what would Tony's mind have been the same way, considering the fact is like if Pepper was still there. Because they kind of talked about it too, because I couldn't remember his reasoning for it, because I was like, yeah, because didn't you blow up all your suits in Iron Man 3? And it's like, well, yeah, he talks about it too, because it's like, he blew up his suits in Iron Man 3. It's kind of like, okay, I'm leaving this behind. But then it's like, but then Ultron happened, and then this happened, and that happened. Like, it was always something, and it's just like, Pepper just kind of had enough, because obviously because of Spider-Man Homecoming, and it ties in with this, and obviously it's just kind of interesting where that storyline is. But nevertheless, it's because Tony was kind of alone. Because, I mean, obviously when you actually think about it, like a lot of the people closest to Tony, that being Happy, that being Pepper, aren't there in his life. Like, I mean, it's just probably just a situation of like, maybe they did, like, obviously I know like with Gwyneth Paltrow, I think it was like a scheduling conflict, so she couldn't be in the movie. So there's that, but I think storyline wise, you could think of it like, I'm sure that's just me overanalyzing, but the two most important people in his life aren't there right now. He has Rhodey, but Rhodey kind of agrees about this whole situation because of, because of his own background and stuff like that, because it's just kind of, because I think also Tony feels the most responsible for, I mean, obviously for Ultron, before a lot of stuff going down, because he's the one that started all this, because it's like, yeah, because it's something, Vision says of like, we presented ourselves to the world, which welcomes people to challenge us. Once again, it's like, after doing what they did in Avengers, everyone on Earth was going to step up to try and knock you down. It's put Earth on the map. Like, I mean, multiple reasons that put Earth on the map, like Infinity Stones and stuff like that. Sure, like, Asgard, like, gods literally had their eyes on Earth too, which is kind of outside of just Tony's situation. But you can make the argument that Tony's the one that kind of really set everything in motion. Technically, I mean, because timeline-wise, you could be like, well, Captain America, potentially Captain Marvel, depending on, like I said, whatever that story ends up being, like what really hit the nail on the board for like all of this to kind of be where it is. So, but at the same time, you understand where Cap is from, because for Cap it's like, no, I can't just give up on my friend. But in the beginning, he was going to bring Bucky in, but then he started, like, things didn't kind of make sense. He figured he couldn't talk to Tony. It's just kind of discommunication, because it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, Tony, even if I told Tony, would he believe me? Would he just think like, oh, I'm trying to protect my friend? And even if I didn't, would he be able to do anything because of the Accords? Interestingly enough, I didn't remember this, but obviously William Hurt's in the movie did not realize, I didn't realize this after having rewatched The Incredible Hulk, obviously fairly recently, obviously when I started all of this. I didn't realize that obviously that's the same character, that's him as Ross. Rather than being a general, he's now a secretary, which is interesting, which still kind of brings that whole Incredible Hulk situation into canon, which is interesting because if you remember the end of The Incredible Hulk ended with the two of them talking, so maybe all of that eventually led to him going from general to secretary, I don't know, which does kind of still put the fact is that Betty Ross still exists. I mean, they might not ever do anything with her, but she still kind of exists within that canon. But like I said, that means, I mean, that still kind of implies that a lot of what happened in The Incredible Hulk, because it is part of the MCU, did happen. It's just they haven't really tackled it, and who knows if they ever will, just because of the whole Universal thing. So they probably don't want to really touch on that too much because of that. So there's probably some stuff they kind of let slide, but not too much. You know, maybe there's only a certain amount of stuff from The Incredible Hulk that they can bring into the MCU, so they kind of picked and choose what they want to. I don't know, maybe that's right, maybe it's not, maybe it's just kind of my thought process, but nevertheless. I think this movie did a fantastic job doing what it did. Once again, it still holds up as just being like these character moments. Like, you know, once again, I don't even blame Scarlet Witch for what happened, you know, and it's kind of sad, you know, because Steve and her blamed themselves for what happened. It's like, no, that was all on isn't his character's name Crossbone, the dude who blew himself? Well, yeah, like it's all on him for what happened, but it's just kind of sad. And then just like, you know, like I said, it all played into Zemo's plan, which is kind of like, yeah, all these powerful people trying to destroy the Avengers, trying to take them down either individually or together. But what ended up destroying them, the empire he talked about crumbling, was them. Because at the end, Ross is like, Everett Ross is kind of like, oh, you know, you failed. And he's like, did I? It's like, no, he didn't. Like, the whole team is technically broken up. Because it's called, I mean, that's crazy to think about too, because like pretty much it ends with everyone kind of hating Tony, because it's like Tony kind of ended up on the wrong side of things. Was this our first introduction to the Raft in the MCU? Like, I think didn't it pop up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. as well? The Raft? I don't remember. I feel like this might have, maybe Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. might have been the first time, because I think there were some earlier seasons where like enhanced people were kind of being sent there. So I think this is like maybe our second time really experiencing the Raft in the MCU in general, maybe. I mean, because the thing is, Tony didn't really know about it, because he didn't know it was kind of like a, well, maybe he knew about it, but he didn't know everyone was going to get locked up there. But so, like I said, this movie sets up so much. Obviously, Spider-Man and freaking Black Panther, just how cool and badass this all is. And I think it's so interesting, especially taking Black Panther. I feel like it's so interesting because this sets up his story so well, in a sense of, because he was kind of caught up in this whole revenge plot, and for him, it's like revenge consumed you, it's consumed them, when he was talking about Steve and Tony, but he was like, it won't consume me, which is kind of interesting, because a revenge plot is what like the whole Killmonger situation ended up being in Black Panther. So I think that's probably why he kind of handled it the way he did, was because he didn't want to be kind of consumed by revenge. I mean, like, obviously what goes on in Black Panther, we'll talk about it then, but I think that kind of, I think it gave him a different perspective going into Black Panther. At least that's how I feel about it. Once again, maybe rewatching the movie now, I kind of get an even different vibe, having subsequently rewatched Civil War again, you know. So, but obviously this started up like the whole Vision and Wanda Scarlet Witch thing of just being, especially because they're like two powerful beings that, you know, no one will probably ever really understand to a certain extent, but he understands her because he wants people to see her the way he sees her. Clint Hawkeye came out of retirement for this, which is interesting because this is like the last time we see him, even now with Infinity War, because it's like, where the hell was Hawkeye during Infinity War? It's like, well, maybe he was with his family. Because when we see at the end, Steve does bust everyone out of there, which is interesting, because the time frame between, like I said, between this and Infinity War and Ant-Man and the Wasp, it's been like roughly 2 years. But once again, it's hard to say, because once again, it's confusing because the timelines are all over the damn place with the MCU movies. At the time, I thought everything was pretty like, oh no, it's this and that, but it's like, no, you never 100% know with everything. Even like, I didn't realize, yeah, I was like, yeah, things kind of ended badly for Natasha as well, because she kind of had to go on the run, which is kind of sad, because it's like, maybe things would have been different if her and Banner had gone on a run together. Maybe that's what she was doing that entire time, like subsequently since Civil War. Maybe she was still looking for Banner. She was on the run herself anyway, because she helped them get away. Because it even gets mentioned in Spider-Man Homecoming about all the videos. Hannibal Buress's character is like, oh yeah, should we really be listening to this? That dude's still technically a criminal, isn't he? It's like, right, so they're all still wanted criminals, and the reason why I brought that up too is like because that plays a part in Ant-Man and the Wasp as well. So, but maybe that's kind of like a time skip thing too of like, yeah, he did kind of go off and do his like, Scott did come back, you know, after being broken out, but tries to go back to his life, but then things aren't necessarily the way he wants them to be. I don't know, maybe we kind of get something in Ant-Man and Wasp where it's kind of like, oh yeah, after 2 years, like, you know, in that 2-year period, he's doing stuff, being a superhero, but maybe he's kind of doing all on his own. Because obviously, like, if you've seen the trailers, you hear them kind of reference, like, the fact is that Hank and Hope had to go on a run because of what he did, like the government started coming after them too. Still love the fact is that Peter's on the battlefield and he's just like fighting Winter Soldier. He's like, oh my god, you have a metal arm? He's like, that's so cool, dude. And he's up there talking to Falcon about the fact is like, oh yeah, it's like, oh man, your whole thing. Like he's nerding out and stuff like that. The situation with Rhodey, how about how things kind of played out for him? He kind of got the raw end of the deal, but for him it's still kind of like he still sides with the, like I'm thinking he signed the Accords, but I'm still not 100% sure like where Tony ended up landing at the end. I don't think he signed the Accords because it's like, well, I feel like Spider-Man would have had to be part of that registry as well. So, but maybe because he's such a street look, because I mean, this is also about the Avengers themselves, but I think it, you know, obviously it applies to other people as well. Because it does tie into Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. if I remember correctly too, because let's not forget there's like superpowered people, you know, the Inhumans in that as well. So the Accord would have affected them as well, which I don't think it really has. Because I don't think Tony signed it because he saw like what it meant arresting all these people. Because in his mind at first he tries to justify it by being like, well, everyone was on the wrong side. No matter, even if Cap was right, he was still wrong about the way he went about it. And Tony, like I said, it was just circumstances that were created to make them kind of go after each other. I do like the twist of like, yeah, like he never wanted the Winter Soldier, like the other Winter Soldiers. I love that. It's like, oh man, that's a plot point. Like, oh man, it's going to turn to like this crazy battle against all these other Winter Soldiers. Nope, they're all killed. I was like, I didn't remember that until they brought it up. Like, oh yeah, there's the other. I was like, oh right, that's the plot point in this. I was like, right. I was like, even before it got to that point, I was like, right, Zemo ends up killing all of them because this is all about destroying them. Then the whole situation with Tony and Steve, like that brutal ass fight is crazy to me. It just kind of like walking away bloody. The reason why he drops the shield and everything is because Tony's like, that was made by my dad. You don't deserve it anymore. Because it was just some things that were said and done and just that led to this point, you know, just because of just what, you know, because it's something that Steve was talking about. The fact of the matter is, if you get so caught up in those you couldn't save, you become blind when it comes time to save others because you'll be so caught up in your own regret. You'll be perpetually stuck in fear, like, oh, what if I fail? And that will make you not act when you need to act, you know? It's just crazy to think about, like, this team you've built took so much time building up these relationships with just to kind of tear them apart. Some people are still good where they are, but obviously other people, it's like, it's crazy to think about, oh yeah, and they're gonna have to fight, join together to fight like a crazy powerful enemy. Like I said, a lot of these characters don't see themselves again until see each other until Infinity War. I mean, that's not including Hulk or Thor, who are kind of off having their own adventure, which will eventually tie into, obviously, when Infinity War happens. But it's just so fascinating what this movie accomplished, you know, not just giving everyone their own moments and stuff like that, but just the raw story of it, like to see this group divided and broken in such a way, and it still makes you go, like I said, it leaves you divided because it's like, I'm kind of with Cap on this. I don't really side with Iron Man. Even then, still now. I mean, because technically he was right, and it's even something Bucky talks about. He's like, I don't think I'm worth it, you know, I might be your friend and everything, but the fact of the matter is, like, I might have been controlled by Hydra during all that stuff, but I still did it. Which, once again, I keep forgetting how much Hydra has an effect on these movies. I think this is one of the last Hydra storylines in the movies up to this point. Hydra, I guess it's just kind of like one of those big shadowy organizations, but it's just kind of interesting. I mean, it indirectly dealt with Hydra. I mean, it's more so like Zemo used Hydra to find out all of this so he can help like dismantle the Avengers. That's all it was, because this is kind of, you know, like I said, this whole thing ended up being like a revenge story, just because it's like, yeah, he was another person affected by like the people they couldn't save. Once again, it's just like they they try to do their best. They try to save as many lives as they can, and it's like, but you can, once again, you can make the argument as like, well, if it wasn't for Tony creating Ultron, we wouldn't have to worry about this. But then it's like, well, there are other things out there. I mean, like, you can't really blame them for the New York incident, because that was 100% Loki. He brought in aliens. How can you really, you know? And it's like, oh, what about, like, you want to blame Thanos on them? It's like, freaking Infinity Stones are on Earth. That's not technically their fault. I guess once again, you can make the argument technically it is, because it's like, rather, if they had given the staff to Thor, maybe like one of the Infinity Stones wouldn't be in Vision right now, so we wouldn't be under these circumstances. Hell, Wanda and Quicksilver never would have been made. So like I said, there's a lot there where it's kind of like, it's not just them. There are a lot of contributing factors that kind of led to like the MCU situation being what it is, you know? But then again, I did bring it up earlier, it is interesting because even Steve himself says, yeah, like, I leave the Avengers to you. The fact of the matter is, when the time comes, like, call and I'll be there, which is like I said, that's Infinity War happening. So and it's just, like I said, it's just fascinating because, like I said, this is like the last big movie like on the Avengers scales before the next Avengers movie, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's like, yeah, still kind of a sour taste in everyone's mouth, I'm sure, but you know, it's just kind of just interesting to think about. The next movie on the list is Doctor Strange, so I was very interested to kind of go back and rewatch that. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this video. Till the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.